Hey, my name is Trisha, and I'm going to be discussing factors affecting physiological function. And I just want to forewarn you that I am very hoarse, so I hope you can hear me. The physiological, metabolic, and cognitive responses in general are complex and differ between sexes across the lifespan and are impacted by heredity. When physical stress is coupled with varied ambient conditions such as the environment, stresses, heat, cold, altitude, hypoxia, or lower body negative pressure, there may be a dramatic shift in the physiological and cognitive response. While there are numerous factors in physiological function during exercise, these same physiological functions share many similarities with while resting. Amid physical activity, the physiological system undergoes various adaptations to regulate and increase the body's efficiency as well as capacity. The body has two types of responses within physiological function, one being acute, which is short term, and chronic, which is considered long term. The physiological response to exercise is dependent on the intensity, duration, and frequency of the exercise, as well as environmental conditions. During physical exercise, requirements for oxygen and substrate in skeletal muscle are increased, as as are the removal of metabolites and carbon dioxide. Acute responses occur as individuals perform the exercises, while chronic while chronic reactions occur over a period of a week, month to a year, and the body makes progressive changes. For instance, a runner will have an acute response, and that can be observed in a triathlon athlete who may become succumb to fatigue, whereas a chronic response can be seen in an individual who was training to become a bodybuilder. And you can see in these photos that I put up what the collapsed athlete, and then you can see, oh, my picture got messed up, sorry, but you would have seen the difference between Dwayne Johnson, also known as The Rock, who started as a slimmer guy, and as he progressed in his career and his exercise patterns, he got bigger. So factors affecting physiological function during exercise could be thermoregulation, oxygen consumption, which is the VO2 maximum, cardiac cardiac output, which is blood flow, gender, heredity, and age. The body's physiological responses to episodes of aerobic and resistance exercise occur in the musculoskeletal and cardiovascular, respiratory, endocrine, and immune systems, and this was said by the CDC. Under thermoregulation, the body is challenged to work towards regulating temperature in a tight balance between heat gain and heat loss. The proper functioning of the body's thermoregulation is of much importance. Mechanical failure to the body's homeostatic balance can result in death. the cardiovascular and respiratory system provide the body with the oxygen and nutrients while ridding carbon dioxide metabolic waste to regulate body temperatures. Per Burton, Stokes and Hall in 2004, a work rate is increased oxygen intake as work rate is increased, oxygen uptake increases linearly. However, there is an upper limit to oxygen uptake, and therefore above a certain work rate oxygen consumption reaches a plateau. This is termed the maximal oxygen uptake, also known as VO2 max. During exercise, more blood is sent to the active skeletal muscles, and as body temperatures increase, more blood is sent to the skin. This process is accomplished by both by the increase in cardiac output and by the distribution of blood flow away from the areas of low demand. In the course of physical activity, cardio output rises due to the increased stroke volume and heart rate. Cardiac output remains similar during submaximal effort in hot and cold environments, but the heart stroke volume becomes smaller when exercising in heat. And the gender factor affects physiological function depending on the sex. Men appear to have a higher aerobic energy source and ability due to larger muscle mass and aptitude to circulate more oxygen during physical activity. Many questions whether gender plays a role in the effects of physiological function will determine that research will ultimately determine the exact upper limit of genetic determination, but present data shows that inherited factors contribute considerably to the physiological functional capacity and performance. And lastly, based on the age of the individuals, the amount of energy or resistance may vary within the physiological function. Factors that enhance and limit physiological function. I put the enhancements would be overall principles, specificity, the specific principle in genetics, and limit would be the poor cardiac output, dehydration, and reversibility training, which is also known as detraining, as well as genetics. The regular application of a specific overload. I'm defining overload principle. The regular application of a specific overload enhances physiological function to produce a positive training response. Exercises at intensities greater than normal induces a variety of highly specific adaptations so that the body functions more efficiently. And specifically, on principle, the specific, I cannot say this word for the life of me, specifically principle entails adaptations within the metabolic and physiological systems depending on the type of overload and the muscle mass being activated. Transitioning from general conditioning to specific training will enhance the athlete's physiological function and evoke muscle memory as well as aid in mastering skill for future events. A factor that indirectly affects or limits physiological function is inadequate cardio output. With limited blood flow, there also becomes a decreased oxygen because the blood is what transports oxygen throughout the body. An individual can have limited physiological functions if they are dehydrated. Adequate hydration is not the often used pouring over the head or body afford and not the often used pouring water over the head or body affords the most effective defense against heat stress by balancing water loss with water intake. A well-hydrated athlete always functions at a higher physiologic and performance level than a dehydrated one. Another factor that limits physiological function is the reversibility training. This training occurs when an individual ceases training rapidly. After only 1 to 2 weeks of detraining, measurable reductions occur in physiological function and the performance capacity, with a total loss of training improvements occurring within several months. And finally, genetics. Various researchers have reported a genetic regulated upper limit to an individual's VO2 values. Physiological function at rest. The respiratory quotient is the ratio of carbon dioxide to oxygen consumption and a reflection of carbohydrates, fats, and proteins to the oxidation mixture. Per McArdle and Catch. The RQ helps appropriate the nutrient mixture catabolized for energy during rest and aerobic physical activity. At rest and during non-maximal exercise, a combination of fats and carbohydrates are utilized as substrates. Amid activities that range from complete bed rest to mild aerobic walking or slow jogging, The RQ rarely reflects oxidation of pure carbohydrate or pure fat. The metabolic heart rate is also another factor affecting physiological function while at rest. This is the rate in which the body uses energy, and it is measured while individuals are at rest. The basal metabolic rate, BMR, represents the minimum energy required for the individual to sustain the body's functions in a waking state. Some factors that affect the resting heart rate and the basal metabolic rate are body mass and composition, age, gender, stress, weight loss, hormones, caffeine, and tobacco. Similarities affecting both physiological function during exercise and at rest. And I put age, heredity, gender, oxygen consumption, thermoregulation, and cardiac output. The similarities observed in factors of physiological function while resting are identical to the elements noted in individuals partaking in exercise. The age of individuals, their genetic backgrounds, and the genders are all things that cannot be altered. However, they can affect the outcome of the individual while exercising or in a resting state. Oxygen consumption, thermoregulation, and cardiac output are all factors that are based on the activity or resting phase as well as the environment, conditions, and duration. Heat production from oxygen uptake. This is the image that I took from the book Cat from Catch, McArdle and Catch 2015, and it's just a demonstration on how oxygen uptake was measured. But I'm using the open circuited spirometry, or which is also known as the bag technique. The body's metabolic process all result in heat production. Measurement of the body's rate of heat production directly assesses metabolic rate. Heat production, also known as metabolic rate, can be estimated indirectly by measuring the exchange of carbon dioxide and oxygen during the breakdown of food macronutrients and nitrogen excretion. During exercise, the act of working muscles cause heat production. However, it is the body's job to retain or release to produce heat. The harder an individual works out, the more oxygen is needed. The more oxygen needs to be consumed. The oxygen consumption increases with temperatures until the maximum is achieved. All energy releasing reactions in the body ultimately depend on the use of oxygen. By measuring a person's oxygen uptake, researchers obtain an indirect yet accurate estimate of the energy expenditure. Closed circuit spirometry and open circuit represent the two indirect calorimetric methods. Given the fitness level, the relationship between the esophageal or core temperature and oxygen uptake is expressed as VO2 max. As described by Catch, McArdle, and Catch, more than likely a modest core temperature increase reflects favorable internal adjustments that create an optimal thermal environment for physiologic and metabolic functions. As exercise philosophers A.V. Hill said, devise mathematical models to describe heat production in muscle and apply kinetic analysis to explain the time course of oxygen uptake during both exercise and recovery. And I just want to apologize about my voice, and I hope that you can hear me on this video. And I would normally redo this video until it was perfect, but I am exhausted and I can't talk. So again, I'm sorry.